Hello friends, welcome back to EPG Pathshala to continue our journey of learning object oriented concepts and programming using C++. In the previous modules, we had the overview of object oriented concepts. We also discussed the basic structure of C++ program. We learned how to write a simple C++ program and how to compile and execute a C++ program. And I am sure by now you must have tried writing a simple C++ program on your own, and you must have successfully compiled and executed that simple program using compiler of your own choice. We also discussed various data types and operators provided by C++. Now, in today's module, we would try to see that how to create our own data type. So, in today's module, we would discuss abstract data type. We would try to see that how to create your own data type in C++. We would see the various access specifications that we can give to the members of a class, and we will also see that how to define a union in C++ and how the unions are different in C++ and anonymous union that we can define in C++. So, as I said, our major agenda in today's session is that we are going to see that how to create our own data type. The first question is that what is the need of creating your own data type? C++ gives you many built-in data types. So, what is the need that we have to create our own data type? The thing is that in our real life applications, sometimes we need to deal with the data for which we do not have a built-in data type available which can directly be used to store and manipulate that data. For example, if in my application, if I want to deal with time, I do not have any built-in data type available in C++ in which I can directly store time and I can directly manipulate time. Similarly, I may wish to deal with the day, I may wish to deal with student, I may wish to deal with the customers. Now, for storing all those informations, we do not have a direct data type available. Therefore, it would be a good idea that if the programming language provides us the facility of creating our own data type, we would want to create a data type which can help us store and manipulate this data with much more ease. Not that we can't deal with these kind of information using built-in data type. For example, for time, we may use 3 different integers. One integer we can use to store hour, another integer we can use to store minute, and another integer we can use to store the seconds. And that would serve this purpose to some extent, and it is possible for us to write an application by storing the data in this particular fashion. But the thing is that if we are able to define a data type in which this information can be stored in more organized way, and it is easy to process that information, it would be very good idea for us. So, we would see that now most of the programming languages allow us to create our own data type. So, we would try to see that how to create own data types in C++. But before we see that how to create a data type on our own, first of all we need to understand that what does it mean to define a data type. Well, if we want to define a data type, we need to define 2 things. One, that the variable of that data type can store what values. So, we need to define the set of values, it may be in the form of a range also, that the variable of that data type can store. And we also need to specify the operations that we wish to perform on this data and what is the behavior of those operations. And when we conceptually define data type in this particular fashion from the user's point of view, we call such defined data type as abstract data type. So, an abstract data type is a mathematical model for data type, where a data type is defined from the point of view of a user of the data, specifically in terms of possible values that the variable of that data type can store. It may be set of constants, it may be in the form of a range, but we need to define that when we declare the variable of this data type, what kind of values that variable will be able to hold. Apart from that, we specify the possible operations that can be performed on that data and what would be the behavior of these operations. Once we define this abstract data type, this is the model, mathematical model, or theoretically we define the data type, but when we programmatically, when we want to use that kind of a data type, we need to implement this particular data type. And most of the programming languages give us the constructs or facilities using which we can define our own data type. You may recall that in C, we could define our own data type using either typedef, enumerated data type, or the structure. Now, this time data type that we are talking about, I believe structure will be the most suitable way of the feature or the construct using which we can define a time data type in C. You must have defined many data types of your own in C using structure or maybe enumerated data type or typedef, but you must have observed that when we use any of these features or construct to define our own data type, we are only able to define one part of that data type. What is that? We are only able to define the values or the constants that the variable of that data type can hold. So, we are only able to define that when we declare a variable of this type, the variable will be able to hold what kind of data into it. But using these constructs, we are not able to define the operation that we wish to get performed on these values and what will be the behavior of that operations. So, these constructs only partly allow us to define the data type, and of course, we cannot be content with partially defining a data type. We would like to define a data type which is more elaborately defined, wherein we also define the operations. So, because of this, in C++ the structure was extended. This is how we used to create the time data type in C, where structure only defines the data part of that data type. This structure in C++ was extended, wherein apart from defining these data, we are also able to define the operations that we wish to perform on that data, and when we define these functions, within that we can define the behavior of these operations. So, when we define a data type like this, we define the second aspect of data type also, that is the operations that we wish to get performed on the data that represents that data item. So, keeping this in mind, the structure in C++ was defined. So, you would see that the structure in C and C++ are conceptually different. In C, we are only able to encapsulate data part of it. In C++, we are also able to encapsulate the operational part of it or functional aspects of it along with the data. If we wish to access the data of this structure, as we used to do in C, we can use the dot operator to access the members of this structure. We can use the dot operator to access the data members of the structure. We can also use the dot operator to access the member function of the structure. But you would see that structure in C, C++ are fundamentally different. There we only encapsulate data part of it, and here we are able to incorporate functions also along with the data item. So, they are fundamentally different, and therefore, C++ provides another construct called class for the same purpose, and this is probably to have the clear demarcation between the difference that we have in C and the way we define the data type in C and C++. So, mostly when we create a C++ program, we do not make use of the structure for defining a data type. We more commonly use class for this, but we need to understand that the structure is also been extended, and that can also be used to create the data types in C++. How do we define the data type in class using class? Well, you would see that you can define the data type using class and structure in almost similar fashion. Here you would see that the only difference that you see in the way we define the data type using structure and the way we are defining the data type in C is that instead of that keyword struct, here we are using the keyword class. Okay. So, here we are defining using class, we are defining a new data type called time. Here also, to access the data members, we can make use of the dot operator. So, dot operators can be used like this and this, but the class that we have defined right now, none of these statements which are written to access the member of the class will work. You would recall that these statements worked fine in case of structure, but these statements will not work fine for the class. So, what is the reason that these statements work well for structure, but they would not work for class? Well, the reason is that the members of class and structure have access specifications, namely private, public and protected, which means it is possible for us to define the members of these class and structure as private, public or protected. Right now, in this module, we will talk about only two access specifications, private and public. Protected we will discuss in the later modules. Now, first of all, let us understand that what does this access specification actually mean? Well, a private member is accessible to the member functions of the class only. Members of the class by default are private, and public members are accessible to the member functions of the class as well as the functions which are defined outside the class. So, they are publicly available to the class members and the functions which are outside the class. The access specification in struct by default is public. We have a choice that we can specify that this member of mine is private, this member of mine is public, but when we do not specify any access specification for any member, in structure by default the member will be considered as public, and in class the member will by default be considered as a private member. Now, you would recall that in our class that we defined, we did not specify any access specification for any of the members. When we do not specify any access specification for that member, for example, let me go back to that class definition of ours. Here, when we defined the class time, we did not specify any access specification. We did not say that the members are private or public, but default specification in case of class is private. Therefore, all of these members are private, which means that these members are private, and if we try to access, now I am assuming that these statements are written in main function or any other function. So, in any other function or in a main function, these members are not available. These members can be accessed only inside the class. So, the data members as well as member functions all are defined as private in class. Therefore, outside class to any function they will not be accessible. But what we can do is the data members that we wish to be accessible outside the class, we may define them as public. We will try to see that when we or what members we should define as private and what members we should define as public. Let us review the access specification in structure. Now, this is a class, the structure time. Here these are the data members of structure, hours, minutes and seconds, which defines that the variable of time class will be holding these kind of values, and these are the operations that we wish to perform on these data values, that is of reading time and displaying the time. You would see that I am not passing any argument to these functions. This is so because to the member functions of structure, the data members are implicitly available. So, I do not need to explicitly pass them to the function. Now, here since no access specification is specified, members by default are public. Since the members by default are public, in main function also they are accessible, but to access them I would need an variable of time structure. So, we have a current time as an object of time structure. Using this and the dot operator, we can access all of these members in the main functions because all of these members are public members of time structure. Let us see the similar thing in case of class. Here also we have defined the data type in exactly the same fashion. I have just changed this keyword instead of struct, here I am using class. But the default access specification in class is private, and here I have not specified any access specification. Therefore, all the members by default are private, and since all of them are private, if I try to write such statements in main function, they will not be working. If I wish to make them work, I need to declare those members which I wish to get accessed in main function or any other function outside the class as public. Now, structure and class are more or less same in C++. The only difference that we see is that default specification of members in case of structure is public, and the default access specification in case of class is private. Now, onwards, for defining the data type, we would be using class. So, let us try to define the class time in a more complete way. In the earlier specification, we defined 2 operations. Let us extend the number of operations that we wish to have in the class. We may want to read the time, we may want to display the time, we may want to find the difference between 2 time objects. So, this is the function which would find the difference between 2 objects in the class. We can also have another function time which will be add time, which we can use to add 2 time objects. Apart from this, we can keep on adding many more such functions into the class, and when we add many more functions into the class, you would see that the class definition will keep on extending. Right now, our class definition is running into 2 pages, and that too the first one we actually divided into 2 parts. If I keep on adding more and more functionalities, more and more operations for this particular class, the class definition will keep on going long. So, I will have to skip through many pages to understand that what exactly is the class and exactly what members does that class has. And therefore, it is very cumbersome and it does not give the complete understanding of the class at a glance. If we want to have a complete understanding of the class at a glance, what we can do is that inside the class we may only declare the functions. That is, we can only keep the prototype there, but the definition of the function we can bring outside the class. How? Let us see that. Here, when I am defining the time class, I am only declaring the member functions, and the definition of the function are not being kept inside the class. These functions we can define outside the class. How do we define them outside the class? So, here what is the advantage? That at one glance I can get the view of the class, that I can see that my class has 3 data members, namely hours, minutes and seconds, and it has 4 operations that I have defined for that class, namely read time and display time, and find the difference between 2 time objects and adding 2 time objects. So, just at one place in a small section of my program, I get the complete view of the class. Now, what we would do is, so now my class is over here. So, class has been completed over here. Now, but what remains to be done is the definition of these functions that we would define outside the class. Now, you would see, even if I add 2 more functions, still in one page or in one screen I would be able to have the entire definition of the class. So, very clearly I would be able to see that what does the class actually I have and what data members and what operations are defined inside that class. Now, let us see that when I need to define the definition outside the class, how do I define them? That is it. That is, I can define that function outside the class, but compiler would not be able to know that the function that I am defining is a member of a class or it is an independent function. So, we somehow need to communicate to the compiler that the function that I am defining is the member of a class. If I would have defined the function inside the class, within the definition of the class, it would have been clear to the compiler that this function belongs to the class, but now I am defining the function outside the class. So, we need a way to communicate to the compiler that this particular function is the member of the class and is not the independent function. How do we do that? You may recall one operator that we discussed in the previous module, that is scope resolution operator. This scope resolution operator has another use here, that is we can use it to specify. Now, the function's return type is void, name of the function is read time and it does not have any argument. What is this? This is, with the help of scope resolution operator, we are specifying that the read time is a member function of time class. Similarly, to define the display time, again we can use the scope resolution operator to specify that this display function is the member of time class. And similarly, we can define, while defining difference time function, we can use scope resolution operator to specify that this function belongs to time, and the same thing we can do with the at time. So, you would see that these functions we have defined outside the class, and the advantage that we gain out of it is that our class definition becomes very concise, and maybe in a page or in a screen we would be able to have the complete view of the class that we are defining. You would see that some of the members that we have defined are public and some of the members that we have defined are private. The private members of the class are not accessible outside the class, that is, they are not accessible in the main function or in any other function. So, those members which are private cannot be used to make use of the class that we have defined. We can access the class by means of public members of the class, and therefore, the interface means the interface which we use to access that class. We are defining the class to define a data type called time, but we would like to use this data type. For using that data type, the interface for us to have an access to that data type will be the public members of the class. The public members of the class form the interface of the class through which we can access the class, or through which the class can be used. In our time class that we have defined, we would see that these functions that we have defined is the public members of the class. So, they form the public interface or the interface of the class. So, these members we can invoke on the objects that we declare in main function or any other function for that matter, and using those objects we will be able to invoke those functions, and through these functions we will be able to make use of the time class. So, these public members form the interface of our time class. Now, which members we should make public and which members should we define as private members, and which members we should define as a public member? Well, it is not a rigid rule that I am talking about, but the thumb rule says that data members in majority of the cases should be made private, and the member function should be made public. But sometime it may happen that one of the member function may be so complex that it has to be broken into smaller parts, and we need to create a function which is not required by the user of that class, but the another member function wish to use that. Such members can be made private, but otherwise the member function should be made public and the data member should be private. There may be some rare cases where we may deviate from these thumb rules, but by and large this is the rule that we have to keep in mind. Now, apart from structure and the class, we can also define unions in C++. In C also, the keyword that we use to define a union is union, but as in the case of structure in C++, we are able to define functions inside it. Similarly, in the unions in C++, we are able to define the functions. You may recall in C, in the unions we are only able to define the data members, but in C++ we will also be able to define the member functions inside the union. All the members of the union will share the memory, but the functions will not share the memory, and you can very well understand that the functions do not vary from the instance of union. Therefore, the functions do not share the memory, but the data members will be sharing the memory. in C++, one extension that we have is that it is possible for us to define a union without a name, and the union without a name is called anonymous union. As we move forward, we would see that what is the use of that anonymous union, but before that let us see the syntax of union. The syntax of union is, again we use the union keyword, then we use the we give the name to that particular union, then we define the data type, data members of that union. Now, these data members will share the memory, which means at a time only one of them will get the memory, and in the variable of this union at one time either we will be able to store this data or this data or this data, but all together cannot be stored as we are able to store in the structure. And as you can see, the extension of union in C++ that it can also have the functions as the member of the union. To use the members of the union, again we use the dot operator. You may recall that the unions are required for those kinds of an application wherein for every object we do not want to store the similar data type, and you may recall that unions are more frequently used as the member of structures, or now in C++ they can be used as a member of classes to have a common memory for those attributes of the structure of the class which are mutually exclusive. That is, for every object both are not required, only one of them is required. As we move on further in the further modules, we might see an example which make use of the union. As I say, the basic use of union is similar in C++ as that of what we had in C, but in C++ it is possible for us to define a union which does not have a name, and we call such a union as a anonymous union. The anonymous union can be of two types, a local one and the global one. So, we can declare it locally and globally. Locally means local to a function, or local to a structure, or maybe local to a. If I define a global anonymous union, it must be static. A local anonymous union can be static or automatic or external. Let us see some examples of union, but before we see the example of the union, let us see that before we see the example of an anonymous union, let us see that these anonymous unions do have some restrictions which are not there on the named unions. What are those? Anonymous union cannot have member functions, that is, anonymous union can only have data members, it cannot have static data member. Now, in the next module we will see what is static data member, but in anonymous union we will not be able to have a static data member, and in anonymous union all the data members must be declared as public. In union also the default access specification is public, but it is possible for us to make some of the members as private, but if we are defining an anonymous union, it is mandatory for us to define all the data members as public. Functions we anyway cannot have in anonymous union, and all the data members must be defined as public. Let us see the example or let us see that how to define anonymous union locally and how to define it globally. So, you would see in this particular example that we are defining this union inside the main function. Therefore, it is a local union, or it is a local definition or declaration, and you would see that here after the keyword union we are not having the name, and since we are not having the name, the members of this union can directly be accessed without using dot operator. But for to do this, we will have to see that these names of these these names of the data members of this union must be unique within the scope in which it has been defined. What is the scope in which the union has been defined? Here we are defining the union in the function main. So, the scope of the union is this function main. So, within that function main function, these data names must be unique, otherwise there will be ambiguous situation which the compiler will not be able to resolve, and therefore, compiler would not allow you to have names of these union members which are not unique. So, what is the use of this union? Well, if we do not want to use both the data items at a given point of time, at a time only one of them will be able to only one of them is required, defining them inside the union will save the memory, because both these members will share the common memory. The unions can also be defined globally, but as I said before, the global union must have the access specification as static. The members of these unions are only accessible within the program in which they have been defined. And here again we can make use of the data straight away without having to use the dot operator and the name of the union, as we do not have the name of the union. Here we only say static union, and we are not giving a name to this union, it is a anonymous union. Well, this is all we wish to discuss in this particular module. Let me quickly summarize what we have discussed in this particular module. We have discussed that classes, also the structures, extended structures in C++ that we have, are powerful tools to create your own data type. In the successive sessions, we will see that C++ give us a lot of features using which we can we can make these classes or our own data type that we are defining using classes more and more powerful. The members of the classes can be private or public. Private members are accessible to the member functions of the class only, and public members can be accessed by non-member function also. Union C++ similar to structures in C++, except all data members share memory, whereas in structure the data member do not share the memory, in union they share the memory. In C++, we are also allowed to have a anonymous union for restricting the scope of the variables. Well, this is all for now. In the next module, we will continue learning more about classes and the objects. There is much more to the classes and objects which we need to learn. So, in the next module, we will continue our journey of understanding classes and objects. So, I look forward to see you in the next module. Bye for now. Thank you. Bye for now. Thank you. Bye for now. Thank you. Bye for now.